Early in the 20th century, there was a columnist known all over the country named H.L. Mencken, and he has two quotes I want to read to you right now. Quote number one, quote, "Democracy is the theory that the common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard." Quote number two, "No one in this world, so far as I know, and I have searched the records for years and employed agents to help me, has ever lost money by underestimating the intelligence of the great masses of the plain people, nor has anyone ever lost public office thereby." I point this out because we live in a representative democracy. And so when we see spectacles like the spectacle that we saw in committee at the House of Representatives who represent us in Congress yesterday, I would just like to point out that these are all elected representatives of the United States. We have filled Washington, D.C. with complete imbeciles. And this is our fault because we voted for them. The fact is that, again, if you don't like your representatives, you can always change your representatives. But it seems as though the American people increasingly like a Congress that is completely unworkable, a presidency filled with numbskulls like the current president of the United States, entire representative agencies of the federal government that are filled with people whose IQs, when combined, might be in double digits. If you think I'm being harsh, I present to you the following clip, which is not, in fact, from Jerry Springer. It is from the Congress. So yesterday, for some odd reason that no one can quite discern, a giant fight broke out between Marjorie Taylor Greene, noted intellectual congresswoman from Georgia, MTG, AOC, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. Of course, you can always tell this is like a WWE face-off when all of the Congress people are just known by their acronyms. It's pretty incredible. I mean, shouldn't they actually have names? But MTG versus AOC versus Jasmine Crockett. And I have to say, the wattage displayed by these three ladies puts feminism back about 100 years. Because, as we will talk about in a moment, two of the men who are leading this committee, James Comer on the Republican side and Jamie Raskin on the Democratic side, they literally cannot help but laugh at the idiocy displayed by this coterie of crows. It is just extraordinary. So it begins when Marjorie Taylor Greene decides that she is upset with Jasmine Crockett and insults her fake eyelashes, and it just goes downhill from there.
Do you know what we're here for? You know we're here about AG.
I don't think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No, ain't nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Oh, Jerry.
That's beneath even you.
Get the order of your committee.
I do have a point of order, and I would like to move to take down Ms. Greene's words. That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you attack the physical appearance of another person?
Are your feelings hurt?
Her words down.
Aww.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Baby
really?
girl.
Don't even play. Baby.
Don't even play.
I don't think
we are going to move, and we're going to take your words down.
Jerry.
So, you agree to strike your words?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Greene agrees to strike her words.
I believe she
Chair
needs to apologize.
recognizes
No.
Mr. Perry.
She
Okay, hold on. Then after Mr. Perry's going to be recognized, then Ms. Greene
I'm not
has 4 minutes and
apologizing.
21
Well,
seconds.
then
Okay,
you're
reserve
not
the right to
striking your
object.
words.
I am
Mr.
not
Perry.
apologizing.
Now let's go. Come on, guys.
Jerry.
Ms. Crockett.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold on.
I'm
parliament.
trying to find clarification on what qualifies.
Chairman, motion to
I had
strike
no
those
idea what
words.
you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
You just voted to do
Y'all did
it.
it first, so you don't want to talk about it.
voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get
Okay.
clarification.
Look at calm down.
No, because this
I
is
would
what
like
y'all
to get
do.
So, doing the hard work on behalf of the patriarchy there, MTG, AOC, and Jasmine Crockett. We'll get to more on this in just 1 second. First, once again, Pure Talk is investing in their customers without charging you an extra penny. I'm happy to announce Pure Talk is now providing international roaming to over 50 countries. As you plan your summer travel, make sure your wireless provider has you covered at home and abroad. Pure Talk already puts you on America's most dependable 5G network. Now they're offering coverage in over 50 countries as well. Enjoy the freedom of unlimited talk, text, and ample 5G data for just $20 a month with Pure Talk. It's a deal that's hard to beat, costing you less than half of what you'd pay with other networks. Not only is their U.S. customer service team ready to assist you with a seamless switch, they also have fantastic savings on the latest iPhones and Androids. Ready to make that smart switch? Join my cell phone company, Pure Talk. Start saving today. Visit puretalk.com/Shapiro to explore their offers. When you make that switch, you'll enjoy an additional 50% off your first month. Don't miss out on the opportunity to save on wireless at home and abroad. Visit puretalk.com/Shapiro. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Again, puretalk.com/Shapiro. Go check them out right now and get the best cell phone coverage on the planet for a price that can't be beat. puretalk.com/Shapiro. Okay, now the question is why? Why? I mean, obviously these are outtakes from Idiocracy at this point. And frankly, I don't even want to know who's the father at the end of this. I just don't. But the question is how and why? And the answer is because Congress and our representative government has become a performative spectacle for people who are hoping to get famous and rich outside of Congress. That's what this is. Yuval Levin over at American Enterprise Institute wrote one of the most important books of the last 20 years about this, talking about how our representative institutions were supposed to be institutions. They were supposed to shape the people who enter them because they are given a grave responsibility of representing the American people and taking care of trillions of our taxpayer dollars and figuring out our foreign policy and trying to rectify breaches in the social fabric and the social compact. That is their actual job. But over time, as we have become a more populous and populist country, our representatives have basically just become stand-ins for our various gripes and grievances. And so what you end up with is the dumbed down version of the American public, the dumbest version of the American public. Now, again, I don't think that this is particularly partisan. I know a lot of people in Congress, Democrat and Republican. I can name the number of intelligent people that I know in Congress on less than two hands easily. And I'm talking about, like, I know probably hundreds at this point of members of Congress and the Senate. The fact is that the American people have chosen poorly. And there are a couple of aspects to this. One is that it used to be, when government did not have insane levels of power over our life, that we didn't actually care who was in charge of the government nearly as much because the government didn't have the power to control every aspect of our life. And so politics was largely relegated to the local level. And when it came to federal politics, people who were very invested in federal politics tended to be the people who were the most, knowledgeable, the people who actually cared the most, the people who were the most engaged. Well, now it's become a popularity contest. It's American Idol now. And thanks to the mass media, you can take dullards and make them incredibly famous. And in fact, if you want to sell papers, that's exactly what you do. If you want higher ratings, what you do is you focus in on the dullards in Congress, not the congressperson who's spending late nights poring over the bills that are being created to shape your and my life. That's the boring stuff. The people like this. And this is why all three of these Congress people are significantly more famous than some actual powerful Congress people who make the policy. So people now use Congress as a platform for other activities, to become famous, to be on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, to be on various shows on the TVs. That's not good for America, and Americans ought to get off of this. But the reality, of course, is that this has pervaded American politics, and it has bled up. The quality of our public leadership is a reflection of the quality of our public conversations, and our public conversations suck because they are low IQ, because they do not involve any sort of actual knowledge base for the people involved. In fact, the quick insult is considered significantly more useful than an actual understanding of the issues at play and the nuances of those issues. Those things are not important. By the way, this is one of the reasons why you are seeing re-engagement online with like 3-hour-long conversations, including people like Lex Friedman or Joe Rogan or that kind of stuff. That's because there is a hunger in a certain segment of the population for something a little more substantive, but that has completely gone away for the vast majority of the American public, which of course should not have to be engaged at this level in politics. And so they're not. They're sort of casually engaged. They tune in for the last 5 minutes of American Idol before they cast their vote. And what you end up with is a bunch of people who are getting rich and famous, being in Congress and being complete imbeciles. This is why you end up with a presidential race featuring an incumbent president who is full on senile, who is no longer with us. And it doesn't matter one iota to at least half the population. This used to be a country where Andrew Jackson ran against John Quincy Adams. This used to be a country where Harry Truman ran against Thomas Dewey. And now it's a country where the three leading candidates for the presidency are Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Again, that just says something about the nature of the democracy. And it says something about the nature of the American public's engagement in these issues. I'm ripping on the public here because, again, people voted for these people. It's not everybody. I think most people look at this and they're a little bit ashamed of what they see in Congress. But frankly, we should all be ashamed of what we see in Congress because I'm just telling you, the level of intellectual achievement in our Congress, the level of true engagement with serious issues is so unbelievably low that you would get a better conversation about what goes on in our nation in a third grade social studies classroom than you would in a congressional committee like you saw yesterday. What a humiliation. Truly pathetic. Now, speaking of truly pathetic, the President of the United States, of course, is no longer sentient. And the Biden administration made that absolutely clear yesterday when they decided via the DOJ to challenge the making public or even the giving to Congress of the tape of Joe Biden being interviewed by prosecutor Robert Hur. Now, you remember Robert Hur. Robert Hur is the prosecutor who is looking into the classified documents mess surrounding Joe Biden. Joe Biden, since he was a senator, has been taking home classified documents, stuffing them in his drawers, putting them in the garage next to his Corvette, and all the rest. This is very clearly illegal, by the way, and that's what Robert Hur found. He said, this is very clearly illegal. There's actually a reason why Joe Biden did it. He took home from the vice presidency a bunch of documents surrounding his opinions on Afghanistan that were totally classified, and he brought them home, and then he proceeded to convey them to his ghostwriter, which is a violation of the law. So how did Robert Hur avoid prosecuting Joe Biden? He said that he was a well-meaning, befuddled old man. That was literally the rationale, that we would have prosecuted him except that he's senile. And this, of course, led to an extraordinary amount of angst and heartburn on the part of the Biden administration and the Biden campaign. So you'll recall that Joe Biden then did a press conference where he attacked Robert Hur for letting him off the hook, basically, because then it was a binary choice. It was either you prosecute the president because he's sentient or you don't prosecute the president because he's a vegetable. So the president, apparently either not understanding that binary or wanting to avoid its clutches, did a press conference, this is in February, in which he suggested that Robert Hur didn't even need to say that he was senile, that actually Robert Hur was a bad guy. Why? Because Robert Hur pointed out in the report that Joe Biden couldn't remember the year that his son, Beau, died. Well, the only person who raised Beau's death, as it turns out, was Joe Biden. But Joe Biden then claimed that Robert Hur had raised his son's death in some sort of nefarious way.
In addition, I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business.
Well, actually, you're the one who raised it because Joe Biden raises his son Beau's death at literally every available opportunity. And then the transcripts came out and it turned out that it was, in fact, Joe Biden who raised Beau's death and did, in fact, screw up the date. We'll get to more on this in just a moment. First, a few years ago, producer Justin was on a very small plane to Africa. The trip was bumpy. He started feeling that motion sickness. He put on his relief band and he felt all better. So Justin now brings it on the road with him wherever we travel, and we travel a lot. Whether you're a frequent flyer or somebody embarking on their first flight, the effects of motion sickness can catch you off guard and quickly ruin your travel plans, especially when you could have been prepared with my friends at Relief Band. Relief Band is a one-of-a-kind wearable device that both prevents and treats nausea using patented technology. It's not every day you're on an airplane and get sick. Relief Band treats more than that. For example, the sick kid in the back seat, parents suffering from motion sickness at the amusement park, chemotherapy patients, and more. Better to have a Relief Band and not need it than need it and not have it. So join the hundreds of thousands of customers who've experienced life-changing relief with Relief Band. Actually, my sister's been using Relief Band for years. Right now, I've got an exclusive limited time offer just for my listeners. Visit reliefband.com. Use promo code Shapiro. You'll receive 25% off plus free shipping. That's RELIEFBAND.com. Use promo code Shapiro. Reliefband.com. Promo code Shapiro. That was the same press conference where Joe Biden then proceeded to mix up the presidents of Egypt and Mexico and forget where his son's rosary came from.
As you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. I talked to Bibi to open the gate on the Israeli side. I've been pushing really hard to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. Let me tell you something. Some of you have commented, I wear since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady of...
Whoops.
Every Memorial Day, we hold a service remembering him, attended by friends and family and the people who loved him.
Okay, so you remember, mental collapse happening in front of the American people in real time, most disastrous press conference in modern history. Well, now the Congress is saying, can we have the tape of the interview between Joe Biden and Robert Hur, considering that Joe Biden continues to maintain that he was with it and lucid. Now, here's the thing. We already have the transcript. There's nothing in the tape that won't be on the transcript other than the president being absolutely senile and befuddled. We all know this. So the White House is now asserting executive privilege in order to protect the tape, which is wild. Why in the world would executive privilege apply to the president's criminal investigative interview with a prosecutor about his activities as vice president or senator and in his post-vice presidency? Why? Like, how does executive privilege even apply? Executive privilege isn't just anything that the person who happens to be president happens to have done or will do at any point in the future. Donald Trump is finding this out as well when he is trying to assert executive privilege with regard to classified materials in Mar-a-Lago, for example, and that's basically being ruled out of bounds probably by the Supreme Court. Like, executive privilege doesn't just apply to everything in the entire world. Why in the world would executive privilege typically means that there are certain jobs that the executive can do that require that there not be any sort of knowledge of those activities? It usually applies to classified materials within the executive branch or internal discussions that are happening in the executive branch about policy. It doesn't apply to Joe Biden's visitor log, for example. It doesn't apply, certainly, to Joe Biden's interview for which the transcript is already available with Robert Hur. So what exactly is their excuse? Well, the White House counsel's office notified House GOP investigators of the move before Republicans were expected to recommend holding AG Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress for refusing to hand over the audio. So Biden said that the White House counsel, Ed Siskel, sent a letter to the Republican House leaders who requested the tape. Quote, "The absence of a legitimate need for the audio recordings lays bare your likely goal to chop them up, distort them, and use them for partisan political purposes. Demanding such sensitive and constitutionally protected law enforcement materials from the executive branch because you want to manipulate them for potential political gain is inappropriate." So in other words, we are going to assert executive privilege specifically for political purposes. That's what he's saying. He's saying you might use the tape for political purposes. Therefore, we will assert executive privilege for political purposes to protect Joe Biden from looking senile on tape. By the way, how bad must those tapes be? I mean, we already know Joe Biden is out of it. Joe Biden has been in a state of mental collapse for years at this point. We are watching a slow-rolling old age home disaster happening in the White House. And everyone's aware of this. Look at a tape of Joe Biden from 2017 and look at a tape of Joe Biden now. Dude was no great shakes in 2017. But right now, he looks as though he's about to keel over at any moment. He's going to start babbling to himself about the oatmeal. So how bad must these tapes, I mean, we already see what we see in public. How bad must the tapes be? The answer is pretty damn bad. Why does that matter? Because everyone in Biden's orbit keeps saying that Joe Biden he's sharp, he's focused, mental acuity, particularly in long meetings. The difference between what we see Joe Biden in public is that at most, you're talking like an hour and a half during the State of the Union when he's been pumped full of children's blood and amphetamines. And with Robert Hur, he's sitting there for like 6 hours at a time. Now, a normal person can do an interview for 6 hours and get through it. I really wonder what's on those tapes. Don't you now? I mean, I'm a lot more curious about what's on those tapes. I've already read the transcripts. I'm very curious as to the affect that Joe Biden was presenting to Robert Hur that led Robert Hur to the conclusion that he's a well-meaning but senile old man. So Garland has asked Biden, supposedly, to block release of the audio recordings, citing concerns that making them public could prompt high-ranking White House officials to be less cooperative in future investigations. That's just a lie. So basically, Joe Biden went to Merrick Garland and said, "Merrick, could you request that I don't release the tapes?" And Merrick Garland's like, "Sure, Mr. President, sure." And so here he was yesterday announcing that he has asked Joe Biden to assert executive privilege to protect Joe Biden from tape the DOJ took of Joe Biden from becoming public where we already have the transcript. This is the most obvious political maneuver of all time, which suggests these tapes must just be absolutely devastating.
In your professional capacity, you suggested to the president to invoke executive privilege. He invoked executive privilege. It protects you both personally. Is that a conflict of interest?
Look, the Justice Department is a fundamental institution of our democracy. People depend on us to ensure that our investigations and our prosecutions are conducted according to the facts and the law and without political influence. We have gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure that the committees get responses to their legitimate requests. But this is not one. To the contrary, this is one that would harm our ability in the future to successfully pursue sensitive investigations.
How? How would it harm their ability to pursue sensitive investigations? They literally released the entire transcript, all of it. And now they're saying you can't hear the tape. There's literally no more information on the tape other than what Joe Biden sounded like and looked like on the tape. That's it. That's all that's on the tape because we already know what he said. So what exactly are they protecting? The answer is that the transcript, when it says ... that is probably Joe Biden looking around the room, peeing in the corner and returning to his seat or something. It is likely Joe Biden pausing for 83 seconds in the middle of a sentence, just stopping dead. Like that's the kind of stuff they have to prevent from getting out. It's the obvious kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why Donald Trump probably is going to request a drug test on Joe Biden before they do the debate. Because there is no question the president's being shot up with something. Given, again, my evidence of that proposition is the fact that the president will not release a tape of him doing an interview where we have already read the words of the interview. I mean, it's an absurdity. It's a true political absurdity, and it only comes from a flailing and failing campaign. We'll get to more on this in just a moment. First, my days are really full. Between the show, being a dad, all my other responsibilities, I can't keep up with my day if I don't get a good night's sleep. That's why I appreciate my Helix mattress. Helix harnesses years of mattress expertise to offer that truly elevated sleep experience. The Helix Elite Collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. If you're nervous about buying a mattress online, well, you don't have to be. Helix has that sleep quiz that matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress because why would you buy a mattress made for someone else? I took that Helix quiz. I was matched with a firm but breathable mattress. I love it. My wife loves it. We are big Helix fans at the Shapiro house. Whenever people stay over at the house, they ask where they can get a mattress just like the one in the guest room because that's Helix Sleep. Helix has a 10-year warranty. You can try it out for 100 nights risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it, but you will. Helix's financing options and flexible payment plans make it so a great night's sleep is never far away. Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders plus 2 free pillows for my listeners. Just head on over to helixsleep.com/Ben. It's their best offer yet. It's not going to last long. helixsleep.com/Ben with Helix. Better sleep starts right now. Listen, Joe Biden is in trouble. There's no enthusiasm for Joe Biden anywhere. Democrats are not enthusiastic about Joe Biden. Independents and moderates are favoring Donald Trump at this point or are looking at RFK Jr. Republicans are certainly not in favor of Joe Biden. Every indicator coming out from this campaign is that this is a losing campaign right now. For example, here is top Joe Biden advisor Stephen Benjamin. He's an advisor in terms of outreach to the black community for Joe Biden. And he was asked, why is it that Joe Biden is starting to bleed black support, hemorrhage black support here? He's like, no, everything's great. We love him.
You know, I will tell you again, I can only speak, Francesca, to my experience. And when I get out there and we talk to people about the amazing successes of the administration under the leadership of the president, vice president, people are psyched. I mean, they're happy about these meaningful developments that are helping change the lives of people all across this country.
Yes, I'm sure that that's real. And that he literally works for Biden. Whenever somebody says, by the way, the polls show you hemorrhaging support, I say, well, that's not been my personal experience. Well, thank you for your useless anecdotal evidence that completely is counter all of the available data. How bad are things? Democratic Representative Dean Phillips, who ran in a primary against Joe Biden, he says, given the fact that there's so many disaffected radicals inside the Democratic Party, they may just want to cancel the convention outright. Obviously, these are the sorts of moves that a successful party makes.
I'm afraid that this is looking awfully like 1968, with a lot of anger and angst and disenfranchisement that I think are going to play out on TV this summer, and it's going to be awfully contentious. So there's time to course correct.
Was in Chicago, the Democratic convention. You think it could look a little like that?
I think it can, and frankly, I think it would be in the best interest of the Democratic Party to forego the convention this year and focus on campaigning, because I don't see any way it can be accretive to the mission of winning the next election.
Yeah, things are certainly going well for the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, the only vice presidential debate in modern history that will matter is probably the one this year between Kamala Harris and whomever Donald Trump picks as his VP candidate. The reason being that everyone believes that Joe Biden will not make it through a second term. It would be shocking if Joe Biden made it all the way through a second term without some sort of full-scale mental collapse. Again, given the fact that he will not even release tape of himself talking with someone for like 5 or 6 hours. So Kamala Harris confirmed on Thursday she will be participating in a July debate. Again, they're doing this early because they hope that if the Republicans shellax Kamala Harris, everyone will have forgotten about it by the election. Trump has yet to pick his running mate, obviously. There are a bunch of different names at the top of the heap. He's talked about J.D. Vance from Ohio. Tim Scott is the name that seems to come up the most often from South Carolina. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum has come up a lot. Not sure exactly why. I mean, I like Doug Burgum, but where's the Burgumentum? He got even less support than Tim Scott did in the Republican primaries. But Kamala Harris is announcing early that she definitely wants to debate somebody. And I'm sure a Republican definitely wants to debate her. That is definitely something that Donald Trump should be taking into consideration. Who is best going to debate Kamala Harris would be a big question, because that's basically the only thing that matters. I have no doubt that if Donald Trump is reelected, he'll serve his entire term. I have a lot of doubt that if Joe Biden is reelected, that Kamala Harris won't be filling out that term. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is running her own campaign. Her campaign right now is, what if we just shovel money at you? So the Democrats have run out of ideas. Their ideas now involve, what if we just throw money into an inflationary cycle? We will just literally pay people to vote for us. Now, they've been trying this for a while here with their student loan relief nonsense. They've been trying this with their green boondoggles. And here was Kamala Harris yesterday saying we are dropping trillions on the streets right now.
I was sharing with Mr. Phillips that we, the president and I, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act, we are dropping trillions of dollars on the streets of America right now to build back up our roads and our bridges, our sidewalks, to invest in a clean energy economy, to deal with the climate crisis in a way that is about building up adaptation and resilience.
So they've dropped trillions into an inflationary economy. And by the way, as the economy continues to stagger along at a 3.4, 3.5, 3.6% inflation rate, as it continues to stagger along at that rate, she says she now wants government-subsidized $25,000 grants for first-time homebuyers who can't pay their down payment. I mean, I feel like we did this before, and it resulted in the subprime mortgage crisis, because it turns out that when you pay people who can't afford a house to get a house, then when the real estate values drop, they go underwater, they can't afford to pay their mortgage, and they can't afford to sell because they paid more than they would receive for the actual sale of the home. And then you get a real estate meltdown. So just genius level ideas. But again, if you can just shovel money out at particular populations, you hope they'll vote for you. That is the old school Democratic playbook, and they're going right back to it. Here's Kamala Harris.
We have now proposed that if you are the child of parents who, or you were raised in a family where the folks who raised you were not homeowners, when you want to go buy a home, you will be entitled to a $25,000 grant toward down payment for a home. Again, acknowledging the realities of it all. If your parents owned a home and then you as their child say, I want to go buy, then your parents will likely have the opportunity and ability to say, honey, you don't have to go take out that big loan. I'm going to take some equity out of my home to help you with that down payment. And that's how intergenerational wealth works. But if you start with nothing, how are we going to give people those opportunities? And so it's about acknowledgement and then pushing through the actual policies that are not just about lip service, but actually making a difference.
So we're just going to toss a bag of cash at you, and even if you can't pay your mortgage, it'll probably work out great. Again, this is literally how we got the subprime mortgage crisis in the first place. Subprime mortgages were subsidized by the federal government, and then when they all collapsed, that infected the entire system through credit derivative swaps and the like. So she wants to just repeat that all over again in the name of equity. But really what's the name? She wants to buy votes. They're buying votes. We'll get to more on this in a moment. First, you owe back taxes or still have unfiled returns. Bad idea, because the IRS is now determined to come after you. The IRS's chief data and analytics officer revealed they're focused on a new enforcement project with an average return on investment of about $6 for every dollar spent. They're targeting individuals and businesses that currently owe back taxes or haven't filed those returns first. Tax Network USA is the nation's leading tax relief firm, and they know the tax code. They're going to fight for you. With a record of negotiating over $1 billion in tax relief for their clients, their team is knowledgeable in handling any type of tax issue. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help. Even if you don't have all your personal or business records from over the years, they can get you filed up to date. Facing the IRS without a professional, not a smart move. Contact Tax Network USA for the best strategic advice to help reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. Call today at 1-800-245-6000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Shapiro. They'll give you a free private consultation on how you can settle your tax debt today. That's tnusa.com/Shapiro, tnusa.com/Shapiro. And Joe Biden is trying to buy young people's votes. So he tried to do it first by backing Hamas in the Gaza Strip, which we'll get to in a little bit. But he's now attempting his most audacious scam yet. First, he tried the, what if I pay your student loans? Will you vote for me then? Will you vote for me if I just pay all of your debt? And they're like, no, we still hate you. He said, well, what if I gave you $25,000 for our house? Like, no, we still hate you. He's like, what if I let you smoke as much pot as you could possibly want? Like, Now, here's the thing. I mean, not to be too cynical about this, but if you allow all the young people to smoke all the pot, I don't think they're going to vote because they're going to be high. But in any case, Joe Biden is now attempting to loosen federal marijuana restrictions. Now, what's amazing about this is about 15 years ago, there was a lot of movement in favor of marijuana legalization, or at least decriminalization. Right? That there was a lot of movement in favor of that. And then the consequences have been absolutely disastrous in every city or municipality that has tried it. It's been awful for cities like Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle, Denver. You can't walk down the street without smelling pot with your kids. You got people just lying out high in the roads. I mean, it's really, really bad in these cities. And that is a combination of two factors. One, when you make drug use more prevalent, bad things happen. Two, because, just like anything else, a competitive market makes product more efficient and effective, marijuana strains have become significantly more powerful over the years. The marijuana that people are smoking now does not resemble the marijuana that was being passed around the 11th grade playground in 1994. This is not the same drug. But Joe Biden is ignoring all of that because, again, he's trying to buy off communities he thinks disproportionately use marijuana or will vote on that basis. That's what this is. So Joe Biden posted a video to X about the reclassification.
This is monumental. Today, my administration took a major step to reclassify marijuana from a Schedule I drug to a Schedule III drug. It's an important move toward reversing long-standing inequities. Today's announcement builds on the work we've already done to pardon a record number of federal offenses for simple possession of marijuana. And it adds to the action we've taken to lift barriers to housing, employment, small business loans, and so much more for tens of thousands of Americans. Look, folks, no one should be in jail merely for using or possessing marijuana, period. Far too many lives have been upended because of failed approach to marijuana, and I'm committed to righting those wrongs. You have my word on it.
Now, again, here's the thing. Again, Joe Biden can't get through even this statement without a bunch of quick cuts. Looks like the end of Psycho. It's bizarre. But in any case, the entire policy predicate here is bad and wrong. Marijuana is currently a Schedule I drug on the Controlled Substances Act. The DOJ decision moves it to Schedule III, a category that means it's determined to have both medical benefits and some potential for abuse. But again, the reality is that the marijuana that is currently being used is significantly more powerful than the marijuana that was being passed around decades ago. According to the American Psychological Association, a huge percentage of people using cannabis in the past 30 days meet the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders criteria for cannabis use disorder. Kids who are using it between 12 and 20, at least 23% of them are addicted to pot. Right, that was one of the supposed great benefits of pot, was that it was non-addictive. That's a lie. It is, in fact, highly addictive for a certain coterie of young people. Not only that, it does significant damage to developing brains. According to Joanna Jacobus, PhD, Associate Professor of Psychiatry at University of California, San Diego, who did longitudinal studies on all of this, it turns out that there are biological brain differences that can increase the chances that an adolescent will start using cannabis, and it also increases their vulnerability to negative developmental incomes. Furthermore, it turns out that if you follow the cannabis use effect, what you see is that people have significant personality issues, memory problems. Students who use cannabis regularly have trouble focusing, feeling motivated during school. It causes permanent deleterious changes in the brain for a lot of people. And of course, it is way, way, way more likely to exacerbate already existing mental health issues, which of course are incredibly prominent with young people right now. And as I say, the THC content in marijuana itself has multiplied radically. According to the NIH, marijuana potency, as detected in confiscated samples, has steadily increased over the past few decades. In the early 90s, the average THC content in confiscated marijuana was less than 4%. In 2018, it was more than 15%. So it has more than tripled. It's almost quadrupled since 1990s. Well, that is not going to be wonderful as it becomes more prevalent in American society, but it is, again, another pathetic attempt to make society worse, but by votes from low information voters who might be interested in smoking more pot. And Joe Biden's presidency is on the rails here, and he knows it. It's true kind of throughout his entire administration. We'll get to more in just one second. First, this Sunday, prepare for an all-new episode of Mr. Bircham, the Daily Wire's groundbreaking animated sitcom. Join the comedic genius of Adam Carolla, Megyn Kelly, Roseanne Barr, Jay Moore, Patrick Warburton, Danny Trejo, Brett Cooper, and an all-star cast at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. If you missed the series premiere last Sunday night, catch up right now. Or if this is your first time hearing that we launched an actual hilarious animated sitcom from Adam Carolla, let me tell you about Mr. Bircham. He's a no-nonsense junior high woodshop teacher struggling to navigate the woke world. Go check it out. It's a really, really funny show. You have to be a subscriber to DailyWirePlus.com. Episodes 1 and 2 are streaming right now. New episodes released every Sunday exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. Don't miss out on the laughter lessons and, of course, the lumber. Plus, for a limited time, you get 25% off all Daily Wire Plus annual memberships with code BIRCHAM25 at checkout at DailyWirePlus.com. Also, our latest episode of the Sunday Special will be dropping this Sunday with special guest Coleman Hughes, a fascinating thinker. You remember him from The View, where he was accosted by Sunny Hostin, and he basically shellacked her just by staying calm. It's a great conversation. Here's a bit of what it sounded like.
Though we have different experiences, we do live in an objective reality. There is such a thing as truth. There is such a thing as facts. And those facts can't depend on the fact that you're you and I'm me. So we have to be able to have a conversation where we can disagree with each other, where no one by default trumps anyone else just by virtue of your skin color or your identity. And that's the only way that we can actually have a conversation.
You're not going to want to miss it. It was an incredible conversation. Make sure to watch this Sunday. Meanwhile, in the grab bag of random news today, Scottie Scheffler, who is the best golfer living right now, he has won 4 of the last 5 tournaments in which he has played. He was heavily favored to win the PGA Championship this week. He was arrested by the Louisville Metro Police Friday morning after trying to drive into the entrance of Valhalla Golf Club, which is the site of the PGA. According to ESPN, traffic outside the golf course had been stopped after a man was struck and killed by a shuttle bus around 5 a.m. Eastern. Scheffler faces charges of second-degree assault of a police officer, third-degree criminal mischief, reckless driving, and disregarding traffic signals from an officer directing traffic. So there's an ESPN reporter named Jeff Darlington who was on scene. Apparently, there's this crash, and Scheffler was trying to drive around the crash scene on a median so he could actually get to his tee time. A police officer then instructed Scheffler to stop. Scheffler continued to drive about 10 to 20 yards toward the entrance. Okay, so we're not talking about Rodney King taking off down a residential street at 100 miles an hour. He went 10 to 20 yards, which for those unfamiliar with math is like 30 feet. He went 30 feet. At one point, an officer attached himself to the side of Scheffler's car. I don't know how that happened. And it was like Spider-Man or what. Scheffler stopped his car as he turned into the entrance of Valhalla Golf Club. After about 20 to 30 seconds, Scheffler rolled down his window to talk to the officer. Apparently, the officer was not dressed in like a normal police uniform. He was wearing some sort of jacket, so he looked like just a security guy. The officer grabbed Scheffler's arm to pull him out of the vehicle. He then reached inside the vehicle to open the door, and once Scheffler was pulled out, he was pushed against the car and placed in handcuffs. The reporter was standing at the entrance when Scheffler was detained. Darlington, the reporter, said Scheffler turned to him and said, "Can you help?" According to Darlington, an officer instructed him to back away. "You need to get out of the way," the officer told Darlington right now. "He's going to jail, and there's nothing you can do about it." Okay, so why am I bringing up this story besides the fact that it's absurd news? Okay, so let me begin with this. A point that I have frequently made on the program is that when a bad situation happens between a cop and a purported perpetrator, when that sort of stuff happens, everybody immediately rushes to ascribe motivations to the officer other than the officer is being a jack. Sometimes officers are just being jack. Now, it appears from this particular account, what you have here is an overzealous officer who got real excited about his job. We are talking here about the leading golfer in the world trying to obviously get into a golf club on time so that he can go to his tea time. And he stopped after like 10 or 20 yards. And then he was trying to talk to the officer, and the officer got overzealous, reached through the window, tried to open his door, and was pissed off at like 5 o'clock in the morning or something. And now he's going to drag this guy off to jail. Okay. Let's just point out here, Scottie Scheffler is white. If Scottie Scheffler were black, if this were Tiger Woods, for example, we would get a 3-year news cycle on why the police are racist, are systemically racist. That's what we would get here. But Scottie Scheffler is white, so we can clearly see that the officer is doing this because the officer is overzealous. Now listen, I love cops. Cops are wonderful. I know tons of them. Much of my security team are former cops. Everyone knows that there are some officers out there who, empowered with a badge, get rather big for their britches. There are some bad cops out there, and there are some cops who are having bad days. And there are some cops who kind of take a little bit of glory in the fact that they're pulling over a multimillionaire golfer and wrecking his day and maybe wrecking a tournament. Now, again, unless something comes out about this incident that we haven't already seen, which would justify the cops' behavior here, I would say this is obvious jack and silliness. Hey, but the broader point is this. The media always rush to make incidents when there are people of different races about the race. Sometimes it's just people being overzealous, and that's something that we ought to keep under consideration. In other dumb sporting news, we talked yesterday about the Kansas City Chiefs kicker, Harrison Butker, who made the criminal mistake of going to speak at a Catholic university and saying Catholic things. Well, the media blowback has not yet stopped. Rich Eisen, formerly of ESPN, he called this totally outrageous to say Catholic things at a Catholic university. How dare he?
You're great at so many things. And the idea that somebody like you could be sitting in a commencement ceremony, or our daughter could be sitting there, and somebody gets up and says that sort of thing to somebody like yourself or your daughter, it's just outrageous. It's completely outrageous. For those who basically are saying, he has his right to say, of course he has his right to say whatever he wants to say. And that, that might be his belief system. But to say that people who are about to receive their diplomas are being lied to diabolically because they are being told that some title that awaits them through their hard work isn't as rewarding as sitting at home and being a mother or being a homemaker.
Well, that's not what he said. What he said in not sitting at home. I love the idea, by the way, that wives who are at home with the kids and taking care of the home, that they're sitting at home. Honest to God, have you ever met a homemaker? I mean, my wife's a doctor. She currently is not practicing because she's still taking care of the new baby and our 3 other children. There is a lot going on in our house. And I will venture to say that she works harder taking care of our kids and doing work in the community than she did as a doctor sometimes. Again, would Rich Eisen ever... this league, the NFL, will look the other way at people who play for the Kansas City Chiefs who strangled their pregnant girlfriend. That is less controversial than what Harrison Butker said, according to people like Rich Eisen. Meanwhile, the ladies of The View were also fighting mad at Harrison Butker. Again, worth defending. People kneeling for the national anthem because America is bad and racist. People worth attacking. Men who say that men should be men and defend and protect their families, and that women should be women and get married and have babies. And if they want to have a career also, that's fine. But the most fulfilling part of being a woman is getting married and having babies, which again was wildly uncontroversial until 5 seconds ago.
What this man is doing is not just a devout Catholic. This is someone who's practicing something called the traditional Latin Mass, which is divergent from the majority of Catholics. It's compared to being cult-like and extremist like some religions in the Middle East and Asia. So this is a very extreme religion, and what bothers me about that as a Christian is that when people abuse Christianity, they often not only cherry pick from the Bible, they misinterpret and lie by omission, by taking out parts that would have explained something a little better. So what I can say to him as a Christian is if you're using this to oppress a people or hold them down, you're not walking with Jesus. If you are using the religion, if you are more obsessed with the religious rituals and practices than you are with the word of Jesus, you're not walking with Jesus. And if you're using it for the judgment of others and as a weapon to beat people down, you're also not walking with Jesus. So I would really encourage him to find the best parts of faith and not diverge into extremist beliefs.
Okay, there's so many insane things about what this lady just said. Seriously. Okay, so first of all, I would love to hear the part of the New Testament where it says that the main priority for women should be to be in the workplace. Does she have a quote there? Like anything? How about the part that's pro-transgenderism or LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign relationships? Like, can she name a verse? And when she claims that she's walking with Jesus by rejecting what Harrison Butker said, I'd love to see the part where Jesus said things that contradict what Harrison Butker said. I would love to see that, because from my read of the New Testament, as somebody who does not have a dog in intersectional fights, that's not what Jesus said or anything remotely close to it. Beyond that, I love when she says the Latin Mass, extremist Latin Mass, like some religions in the Middle East. Why don't you say it out loud, lady? Which religions in the Middle East are we talking about here? Which ones are the fundamentalist religions in the Middle East that you're talking about? Are you going to say that out loud? I wonder why not. What stopped you? Right, so in other words, you're allowed to be as anti-Catholic as you want to be, but you can never say the word Islam, ever under any circumstances. By the way, as far as the Latin Mass, I have a bunch of friends who still practice the Latin Mass. Michael Knowles, a quasi-friend, practices the Latin Mass. Matt Walsh, an acquaintance, practices the Latin Mass. There's nothing wrong with practicing the Latin Mass. The idea this is some sort of extremist, it's literally what the Catholic Church did for 2,000 years until fairly recently. And there are many Catholics who still do it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's totally fine. Not only is it fine, it was, again, common practice. The outsized outrage for this it's truly extraordinary. You want to Bud Light yourself? Do exactly what the NFL and its supposed allies are doing right now. We'll get to more on this in a moment. First, when you get home from work, first thing you do, you get out of the work clothes, you get into some loungewear. Well, luckily for me, I have the world's best loungewear from Tommy John. I love it. It's so soft and comfortable, I could fall asleep in it. Not that I ever have. I do it all the time, actually. Yet it's stylish enough to also wear out without looking like I just rolled out of bed. And dudes, if you're wondering how they can get better, let me tell you, Tommy John underwear, it's truly one of a kind. I mean that. I don't have any other underwear because it's just so good. I've been wearing Tommy John underwear for years. If you haven't tried them out yet, you're missing out. It's not just any old boxer brief. Tommy John's stylish and soft second skin brand underwear offers dozens of comfort innovations, including a supportive contour pouch, breathable, lightweight, moisture-wicking fabric, 4 times the stretch of competing brands. Plus, Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee protects your most valuable assets. So what are you waiting for? Try Tommy John today. Get 20% off your first order right now at TommyJohn.com/Ben. Save 20% on second skin at TommyJohn.com/Ben. That's TommyJohn.com/Ben. See site for details. You'll end up doing what I did and throwing out all your other underwear. Go to TommyJohn.com/Ben to save 20%. Okay, so what is the alternative structure that is being performed by our media here to the attacks on Harrison Butker, who suggests that there are traditional definitions of male and female and masculinity and femininity? Well, let NBC tell you. So yesterday, NBC put out a trailer for a documentary that is called Queer Planet. So here is the documentary from Peacock, which is just, oh my God, here we go.
The paparazzi really are everywhere.
Everything you were taught as a kid is wrong.
Everything?
Gay penguins, bisexual lions, sex-changing clownfish.
This is a queer planet.
Queerness has always existed. It's only in humans that we have such a stigma about it.
The idea of just having 2 fixed sexes is clearly out of style.
Out of style?
Mother Nature is pretty open-minded.
Nature is open-minded.
Sex is not just for reproduction.
It's clear that no matter where you look on our planet, nature is full of queer surprises.
Queer surprises.
To be honest, we should all probably get laid a little more than we do.
Okay, so a few questions. One, when they talk about clownfish that change sex, are you a clownfish? Are human beings clownfish? Number 2, when they say that animals practice homosexuality, first of all, we should note at this point, very few species actually practice exclusive homosexuality, meaning like exclusive homosexual activity. It's extremely rare in the animal kingdom. There is homosexual activity that occurs among animals. It is generally by animals that also have sex with the other sex in order to reproduce and maintain the species, which is what happens in the animal kingdom. Because as it turns out, reproductive fitness is the basic category of survival for any species, and that generally involves, in the animal kingdom, male and female. But put all of that aside, why in the world are you taking your moral cues from rams? Like, this is the part that's truly astonishing to me. So I guess it's true. I mean, I suppose that is the alternative. If on the one side you have Harrison Butker and his biblical vision of what male-female sexuality should look like, and then on the other side you have, let's follow the ways of the clownfish. Let's follow the ways of the lion. Okay, well, I mean, animals routinely engage in... How much sexual activity among animals is consensual, for example? These are human categories that do not apply to the animal kingdom. Why is it that you are applying human categories to the animal kingdom other than to treat human beings as animals? As scientists have said, the labeling of activity as homosexual in animals, for example, is not the same as labeling that in human beings. Because when you're talking about human beings, you're talking generally about a quote-unquote orientation, internal desire, for example. But it's an anthropomorphic term when applied to animals. So all of this is silly on its face, but it does go to what is the alternative form of morality envisioned by the society. It's a queer planet. You should take your cues from gay giraffes or something. Okay, forgive me if I decide that I'd rather stick with the biblical moral code that has proved itself valuable and useful over the course of several thousand years, as opposed to, say, emulating gay penguins. Amazing high-level analysis there from NBC. That's some solid stuff. Okay, meanwhile, in other fascinating news, remember this thing called EcoHealth Alliance? Remember that? So EcoHealth Alliance was the organization that was funding gain-of-function research over in the Wuhan labs. And they were brought under scrutiny because it turns out that they were funding all this gain-of-function research and they didn't know what happened with the money and anything like that. Well, now, according to the Washington Post, federal health officials Wednesday suspended funding to a U.S. research organization linked to investigations about the novel coronavirus's origins, saying the move is, quote, necessary to protect the public interest, given the organization's failure to monitor virus experiments in a Chinese lab before the pandemic. Federal officials are seeking to block future funding to EcoHealth Alliance, which worked with the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China, citing new evidence about EcoHealth's actions that emerged ahead of a contentious congressional hearing this month. Apparently, they failed to adequately monitor and report on risky virus experiments at Wuhan Institute of Virology. EcoHealth is now suspended from federal funding and will be potentially disbarred. Now, remember, EcoHealth Alliance was working with Dr. Anthony Fauci in order to shut down any sort of investigations or rumors about the possibility that the virus sprang from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. They were also working with Dr. Fauci in order to shut down possible alternatives to the federal government's take at the time on handling of the virus from people like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya at Stanford and the rest. So it only took a few years for their funding to be completely cut off. But don't worry, the Democrats will never apologize for what they did. The Secretary of the Navy was asked in a hearing yesterday about whether there were any regrets about firing service members who refused to get the COVID vaccine. Which again, the only reason to get the COVID vaccine was to prevent yourself from dying if you were elderly or obese, as it turned out. At the very beginning, everyone lied. Pfizer, the federal government, everyone lied and said that it would prevent transmission. It did not. And so the idea that a young, healthy 20-year-old needed to get the COVID vaccine was a lie and it wasn't true. So are they apologizing? Absolutely not.
Do you believe that you were an ally for the 1,878 soldiers who were fired or the 3,746 Marines who were fired for not taking the COVID shot? Were you an ally for them?
Sir, I followed the laws. They disobeyed
Or did
the
they
law.
feel included?
They disobeyed a law.
They were fired.
They were fired because they disobeyed
Do you
the
regret
law.
that? Do you regret that?
Currently existed. I have no regrets.
You have
whatsoever.
recruitment challenges. You
know what,
refuse
Senator?
to admit that DEI is a part of this. You're firing qualified people who are well trained, and you sit here so smugly to act like none of that has any impact on the readiness of our Navy.
Okay, that is absolutely true. Okay, but you know what? Let's do some good news here. So, a little bit of good news. Europe, it seems, is starting to find its footing at least a little bit. Dutch nationalist Geert Wilders on Wednesday said a deal had been reached to form what was said to be the most right-wing government in the Netherlands in decades, according to Reuters. Wilders has influenced Dutch immigration policy for years from the opposition benches since 2006. He said they have an agreement among the negotiators. They're going to form a government. He's going to propose a prime ministerial candidate. A Labour Party veteran who led some of the coalition negotiations, a guy named Ronald Plasterk, was named by Dutch media as a likely candidate to head a new government. That has not been confirmed, but the main outcome here is going to be a major crackdown on immigration in the Netherlands, largely from extreme Muslim countries. Also, Wilders' new government announced very quickly they were going to move the embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. These are all good moves in Europe. So that, at least, is a very good thing. Alrighty, folks, the rest of the show continues right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We will jump into the latest on the Donald Trump hush money trial, where Michael Cohen's testimony completely fell apart. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.